Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, Principal Atmospheric Scientist at Nutrient Ag Solutions, and I want to thank you for watching this weekly Ag Weather Update brought to you by the Farm Credit Associations of North Carolina. Well, looking back over our last 3 days at total accumulated precipitation, we can see quite a bit of hit or miss showers and thunderstorms across parts of the southeast, specifically getting up into the Carolinas here. Some locally very heavy rainfall, but a lot of folks did miss out on the weekend rain. Now, Hurricane Umberto, did take shape and form right in through this area, but has since taken a pretty hard turn to the east, and we need to be kind of trying to figure out where Umberto is going and what could potentially be following Umberto. In the coming days, we're going to be seeing a much more active northern United States storm track coming into the northwest and racing on off to the northeast to up in eastern Canada. And largely, that's going to keep this region relatively dry over the coming days. But we do have some tropical systems being on the lookout for, so let's get into it and talk about it. Overall, a tropical storm and then eventually Hurricane Dorian did do this to parts of the Carolina coast. We can see here that when we look back over the last 2 weeks, of course, a surplus much greater than 5 inches in some locations here, where we saw rainfall totals ranging between 2 and in some places over a foot of rainfall from Dorian. But meanwhile, back to the west of that heavy rainfall corridor there, we see that things were overall relatively dry. And the question is, are we to be bringing in anything to kind of help eliminate some of the drought we do still have in parts of the Carolinas and other parts of the southeast? So this was our latest drought monitor update that came out here last Thursday. And of course, we have removed the drought signals that were right in through this area. But over the coming week, I don't see much in the way of big time precipitation, at least in the next 5 to 7 days, that could come through and wipe out some of the patchy drought that's in some of these parts of the southeast, but certainly parts of the Carolinas there. So let's take a look at what is the main features we're going to be discussing. We're going to start off first by talking about our all hazards weather map put up by weather.gov. This morning, don't be surprised if early in the morning on Monday you did run into some fog in parts of the Carolinas, but let's talk about what's going on in the tropics, because we can still see the advisories that are put out for Hurricane Umberto, which again is a Category 1 strength hurricane. Several of my meteorologist friends over the weekend were sharing this animation. It was a fantastic view showing you where Hurricane Dorian at Cat 5 strength right there passed in the same location as Umberto, with that second image there. The difference is, of course, being Umberto was a much more disorganized system, as you can see here, but the center of circulations hitting the exact same locations in the Bahamas here. That's rare to see back-to-back hurricanes do that, although again, Umberto's significantly weaker. Where's Umberto going? Well, over the next few days, we continue to see the upper-level steering winds taking it off shore and away from shore, but as this upper-level trough feature sneaks in, we could be trying to draw back some of the moisture from Umberto and some of its circulation back north a bit and maybe back west a bit. And if it does follow some of the western ensemble members here, this is not a landfall. This is basically bringing in some widely scattered showers, some much wetter weather here to the basically the far eastern parts of North Carolina. But a lot of our best guidance here does keep this away from shore, and it feels as though we're done with the influences of Umberto in the near term. So what are we watching after this? Well, there's a little system that's in the Gulf, and this one is really going to be bothering this corridor, kind of lining up with an upper level low that sweeps through over the next few days here. But both of these are going to resist bringing moisture over toward the southeast and along the east coast. I'll show you that in a few minutes. We must keep our eye on this developing system here, because remember, we are right now at the peak of hurricane season. National Hurricane Center has given this one an 80% chance at developing into a tropical depression over the coming days here. Now, this is where we anticipate it being 5 days from now. So that's the 5-day cone, which means we're going to really have to wait until next week to talk about how and where the steering currents evolve to see if this system is able to approach the U.S. coast, specifically the Carolinas. But right now, just going to let you know, the upper levels of the atmosphere are moving into a much more conducive phase for letting more tropical convection form. And that's where you see these blue colors shifting over parts of the Caribbean, parts of the Gulf of Mexico, and the Western Atlantic. So the blue colors there, again, these are called velocity potentials. What they do is they allow us to understand where the upper levels of the atmosphere, again, are conducive to tropical convection. So what are we seeing? Well, this is a 9-day precipitation map. It mainly focuses on the next 4 to 5 days. It's got a better grip on that. But overall, we see that much of the action's coming into the Pacific Northwest, racing through the north central part of the U.S., a tropical system interacting with several low-pressure systems that keep coming right through this area. But you're going to see high pressure is going to tend to dominate across much of the East Coast and the Southeast. And yep, that includes the Carolinas. And as a result, rainfall over the next week is going to be largely hit or miss. And you're also going to see what this is going to do to our temperature patterns in just a few minutes. Now, the bigger flow characteristics, which are animating for you on the right there, tell us that the atmosphere overall is relatively unblocked. I do notice that the model, at least the ensemble, which means we're running multiple models at once here, is tending to wash out any well-defined features coming through the eastern half of the United States. But I certainly see this factor, and that is storm systems continue to lift, which means when they come into the Pacific Northwest, let me show you an example of one. See the troughs sweeping in the northwest right there, those blue colors? Monday, Tuesday, into Wednesday. See the trough finally emerges here in the Central Plains, and then it goes from there right up to the Hudson Bay. So I'm tracking this blue here. You just watch it goes right up to the Hudson Bay. And as a consequence of that, this is going to tend to keep the storm systems away from the southeast. It's going to let their fronts maybe kind of linger more to the north of the Carolinas rather than pass through them. And we keep seeing these features showing up that we're trying to build, a case in the Western Pacific here, in the Central Pacific here, for keeping relatively flatter flow moving forward. But I think the models may be washing this out. So what we need to do is see the end results so we can understand what this flow pattern really means for us. In the near term, this is just stretching us out through the next couple of days here, getting out to Wednesday morning. Overall, what do you see in the forecast? Widely scattered showers and storms. If I take you back, let's just get to about midday on Monday into afternoon. Now, do you see this right in through here? There's a frontal boundary right in through this area. So Monday evening, getting into early Tuesday morning, widely scattered showers and thunderstorms throughout Tuesday morning, Tuesday afternoon, and Tuesday evening through parts of North Carolina, specifically western North Carolina at this point. But this also tells me, if you just watch again, so I'll just go fast. See the precipitation sagging south? There's actually a frontal boundary coming down the east coast and through here, cooling things off for us for the second part of our week this week. But no major organized precipitation systems coming through, at least through Wednesday. Let's see when the next one does get here. So we'll pause it right here, which is 1 a.m. Wednesday. And let's just now get through Wednesday during the day into Thursday. And what do you see? We see overall a big dome of higher atmospheric pressure stretching through this area. So the action's all in the middle part of the country and avoiding parts of the East Coast, specifically the Carolinas. So we see that getting all the way through the end of the week, this is now Friday 1 p.m., getting into Saturday morning, high pressure dominates as our storm track runs through the north central part of the United States. When do we get our next big chance? Well, that ridge hangs on through the weekend and then finally breaks down maybe by Sunday night, Monday. That's when I maybe get a cold front to come through and bring in some more unsettled weather. But you've got a relatively dry week ahead, which is what we saw in that total precipitation map a few moments ago. When I say dry, I'm not only mean in terms of precipitation, but in terms of water content in the atmosphere, humidity. This is an animation showing us precipitable water. We know that we start off with relatively high precipitable water coming through on that first front. So this is the chances that we have early this week of some widespread scattered showers and storms. But look here, this is the drier air sliding south. And by Wednesday, into Thursday, Friday, and even into Saturday, look at that dry air denoted with these blue colors setting up shop over much of the Carolinas. That's why we see that drier picture being painted for us, while all the action's tucked away in the midsection of the U.S., at least through our next 5 days. So that's a key indicator on what's going on here with our moisture content. Take a look at what it does in terms of temperatures. This is starting us off. We're looking at high temperature departures from normal. This is in the day on Monday. Watch this. This is Tuesday. Departures from normal. So in general, 0 to 5 degrees above average. Look at this though. Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Yeah, cool down is coming. Couple degrees below average. That's going to be welcome while heat skyrockets in the midsection of the United States. So putting that all together over your next 5 days, cool here. Backdoor front sneaking in this way, heat's in the middle part of the country. Days 6 through 10, we really try to keep that heat tucked away into this corridor here, near average temperatures again over for parts of the Carolinas. Stretching us out to days 11 through 15, this is when that pattern gets a bit flatter. We could be seeing warmer than average conditions across the whole of the southern tier of the United States, but certainly warm, I think slightly warmer than average for the Carolinas, but nothing like the heat that we've seen. So speaking of the heat we've seen, look at this. March through May, statewide average temperature ranks. North Carolina, 119th out of 125 years on the record there. South Carolina, 118. What about June through August? Wasn't nearly as hot compared to average early in the season, but still 109 and 104 is where we rank. That's a very warm spring and summer we endured. The last 30 days, we've still been 2, 3, 4 degrees above average. That's the map that's over there on the right when you put it all together. So this temperature change that's coming up is in contrast to this. But what I want to do before I give you a quick international update is give you the latest I've got on what's happening maybe for our longer term forecast here. Okay? A couple of things to take note of. One, we've seen the emergence of cooler water off the west coast of Africa. West coast of South America. Most of the times when we see that, what we're discussing here is maybe the development of a La Nina. Now, our ocean temperatures look like that. Look, we've got this collapse of El Nino past midsummer. Temperatures have now gone down here below average in this area. But the atmosphere is not behaving as if it's a La Nina developing. We did get a nice little trade wind burst here that helped bring up some of that colder water, but overall we see positive anomalies in terms of our wind speeds across the open Pacific, means they're coming from the west. So that's an interesting signal, and that's because we're competing with what's going on in the North Pacific. And you're like, well, why are you talking so much about the Pacific? Well, that's where our weather sets up for the stuff we have to deal with in the middle and eastern part of the United States. So as I look forward, right now, we see that our El Nino forecast is to keep it very close to what we call INSO-neutral throughout much of winter. Now, there's a big spread in this forecast, an enormous spread. But if we have an INSO-neutral winter, this tends to be a bit more active in through this area in terms of our impacts on precipitation. Not much, though, but a bit more active. What do we typically see, though? A much cooler pattern emerging for this section of the United States. So if we allowed the forecast of El Nino to be our only guide on winter, this is what we would expect to get. But it's a bit more complicated than that. And what's interesting is our long-range model from the European here does keep this area for November and December very active, but it's doing it for entirely different reasons. The European model is trying to bring in colder air out west first, which gives us a flow pattern that does this. And if the European has this handled right, this is going to be a very wet and a very, stormy and potentially snowy start to our winter in 2019. What may be in support of this? Well, it could be that the fact that the North Pacific is quite warm. We call that the positive phase of the Pacific Decadal Oscillation. That often gives us a flow pattern that does that. And if that's the case, and if the PDO is more dominant than El Nino, we could be in for a rough start to our winter in terms of both temperatures and precipitation. Now, it's just a preliminary idea. We're going to keep watching it every single week and keep you updated about it, okay? But from here, I want to give you a quick global update and we'll wrap this one up. Over the weekend, let me turn off that sound there for you. Over the weekend, what we were watching here was in southeastern Spain, in Valencia, which is where the video is playing here. We had a forecast of some very heavy rain that's certainly verified. And what's kind of scary to me is as these cars are being tossed around in these floodwaters, you maybe notice that the taillights come on and the brake lights are on. That tells me somebody is in that vehicle pressing on the brake pedal. It's kind of crazy to think about here. That's a pretty scary situation for those folks. Elsewhere, in Europe this week, while the discussion is not going to be so much around precipitation, it's going to be more about the temperature patterns. I expect warming in Western Europe throughout the week, and we're going to keep much of Eastern Europe and Western Russia on the cooler side of things. Now take a look at this. This is the Black Sea right in through here. We could be seeing our first, decent cold weather, maybe some sub-freezing temperatures coming into parts of the Russian wheat belt, maybe getting into parts of Poland, eventually over to here, but also parts of Ukraine as well. Turkey not expecting to see sub-freezing temperatures. This is really going to be hit or miss on a frost next Saturday morning and next Sunday morning. That's what we're watching over there. Also, taking over to China very quickly. China's southern growing regions have been dry for a while, especially this area right in through here, but their northern growing regions, all three of these areas, anticipate over the next 10 days to be on the drier side of things as they're trying to finish out a crop. And finally, what's going to be in the in the news headlines in terms of weather a whole lot more in the coming days and weeks and months is what's going on in Brazil. The drought that is right now occupying this section of central Brazil is one of the worst on record, so very, very dry. They're right now looking forward to the fact that the Mad-Julian Oscillation has come out of its null phase, moved into phases 8, 1, and 2. So you can see that right in through here. That tends to strengthen what's called the low-level jet that runs right through here and enhances what's called the South American Convergence Zone. So we're going to be pulling moisture out of the Intertropical Convergence Zone and wrapping it around there. But this is not going to be the kind of rain that they need to bring soil moisture values up such that they could plant their first crop beans, which I mean, we're going to anticipate a delay in the planting of the first crop beans because this is going to be short-lived as the MJO curls around to phases 3, 4, and 5 in the coming days and weeks, which are much more suppressive in terms of, well, bringing that monsoonal moisture in. All right. So we are watching all these things. That's why we give you updates every single week. We hope you have a great week. And we at Nutrient Ag Solutions, thank you for your attention. We'll talk to you again soon. Thank you.